Good morning, everyone. Welcome to an orientation to Connecticut DMHAS Resource Link Problem Gambling Services, PGF. I'm Jen Jacobson with T-Task. We're hosting today's event. We're very grateful to our partners over at Problem Gambling Services for sharing all of the information here today in this webinar about the resources and services that they provide. So without short ado, I am going to kick it over to our colleagues over at PGS to let them get going in their presentation and introduce themselves to you all. So thank you for being here today. Just again, feel free to use the chat as we go along for any questions or comments. Thank you. So Kelly, Haley, and Jeremy, you are on.
Thank you. I guess I'll start. So,
are you seeing the whole screen?
Yep.
Perfect.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeremy Wampler. I am the Behavioral Health Clinical Supervisor who oversees the Problem Gambling Services Unit. And I'm joined with my colleagues, Kelly Lepard and Haley Brown. If you want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly.
Hello, everyone. Haley Brown, the other prevention specialist with DMHAS Problem Gambling Services, and I oversee our problem gambling awareness initiatives with a particular focus on strategies and partnerships aimed at reaching diverse communities and population. And I will dive deeper into those initiatives during this presentation. Thank you all for being with us.
I could say a little more. I'm Kelly Lepard. I'm the other prevention coordinator, and I oversee the contracts with the 5 regions, college campuses, and youth work. So we'll get into all of those details as well. So nice to see you all today.
Next slide, please. So for today, our learning objectives are we are going to walk away being able to identify the primary funding sources that support problem gambling programs in Connecticut. We have a whole host of programs, so we'll go into some of those. Understand the range of services offered through DMHAS, Problem Gambling Services. Recognize opportunities for collaboration and service integration. And learn how to connect individuals to appropriate services and support. So we like to start every presentation with some definitions. There are a lot of terms that are out there, and for the purposes of today, these are the working definitions that we're going to use. So first is, what exactly is gambling? Or you may hear gambling, you may hear gaming. The industry uses the term gaming when referencing gambling. We call it gambling. So you may hear those interchangeably. So gambling is risking something of value on an uncertain outcome. It doesn't always have to be money. It could be for possessions or material goods. Oftentimes those are for youth and underage folks, they will often wager things of value and not necessarily money. Or those who are incarcerated also will wager things. So that's our working definition for gambling. You may also hear the term responsible gambling. So basically that just describes ways in which you can play the games in a way that does not create harm. So learning to set some limits on gambling, and there's a whole variety of ways in which people can do so. Responsible gambling is also a term that is widely used by the industry. You may see responsible play CT at most of the gambling establishments, including the lottery. So we kind of came up with that responsible play several years ago, because instead of just telling people please play responsibly, which really doesn't say much, we developed a campaign in partnership with the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling and the industry to come up with some parameters around what that looks like. So setting time, money, and things of that nature, really giving some people some kind of instructions on how to do it safely, how to participate without creating risk. Problem gambling is a pattern of gambling that can start to become problematic in certain areas. Could be financial, could be legal, could be relationships. Not really the stage where they're having a diagnosable clinical disorder, but certainly starting to develop some issues around their gambling behavior, and something that should be looked at that point. And then we have gambling disorder, which is the clinical term used to describe a clinical diagnosis of a gambling issue. And there are certain criteria that a person has to meet in order to meet that that criteria, that diagnosis, and therefore would enter into some of our treatment programs, which we'll talk about. Next slide, please. And we also like to let everybody know that we are gambling neutral, even though we work for Problem Gambling Services. A lot of our work is not only on the clinical aspect of gambling disorder. We do a lot of prevention, harm reduction. We have partnerships with the industry. We partner on some initiatives, and so what we like to do is really focus on educating the community on gambling, the harms, the resources, how to keep it safe, if it becomes a problem, where to go, so on and so forth. So we do try to remain neutral in all aspects in order to do that work. So in Connecticut, we recently entered our largest expansion since Foxwoods in 1992. Foxwoods was, when opened in 1992, was the largest casino in the world, which is hard to believe, but yes, it was. It no longer is. There's a couple of larger casinos and some of the international casinos in our across the globe. But for a time, Foxwoods was the largest. We were a destination, and over the years, the landscape of gambling has expanded vastly across the country. And in 1996, Mohegan Sun opened up, and then after that, it was pretty stagnant for quite some time. We had Keno, but then the largest expansion was in 2018, when the Supreme Court overruled the PASPA, which basically opened the doors for online wagering. And they left it up to the states to determine how that would look, if they were going to allow it or not. Connecticut was one of the earlier adopters to online wagering. And when we decided that we were going to open up online gambling, we just kind of, I say, rip the Band-Aid off a little bit. And instead of just doing it little by little, we legalized everything from online casinos, online sports betting, online lottery, which also includes fantasy sports, which isn't technically considered gambling, but it was lumped into that expansion. So in Connecticut, we have several forms of gambling as of this 2021 expansion. We have lottery and iLottery. We have in-person and online casinos. We have off-track betting, which is, for those who are not familiar, off-track betting is, we have 9 teletheaters, they're called, across the state. So essentially what they are venues where a person can go in and they can bet on horse races, dog races, highlight, that are simulcasted through, so they're broadcast through TVs, and then people are able to place bets on those. So they're not live happening. They're not at a track, but they're at a storefront that's televising these things, and they can bet on these. The off-track betting facilities in Connecticut also allow for sports betting. So there are sports betting kiosks at those venues as well. So we have sports betting and fantasy sports, which I mentioned. Charitable games, so those are managed through the municipalities throughout our state. Stock market, a lot of people don't necessarily equate gambling with stock markets, but we certainly have seen people enter our programs who are primarily day traders, so that higher turnover type of risky, quicker bets really appear more like gambling-like than the other forms. Cryptocurrency, video games and loot boxes, and then we have other here just because gambling is always expanding in some form or fashion. Currently, those are the legalized forms that we have in our state, but they're always, we're always waiting for the next thing to happen. So in the near future, there may be some other form of gambling that we are not familiar with. There are some non-legal, illegal, I guess we could say, forms of gambling that people participate in. There's plenty of offshore type of sports betting venues. There's also some betting things that go on with people bet on elections. They bet on, all kinds of different kind of prop bets. They're not necessarily legal, but they do happen. So we have that other in there as well. And then in terms of ages that people are able to gamble, unlike substances like tobacco use or alcohol, gambling is kind of all over the board in terms of how old you have to be to participate. So in order to play the lottery, iLottery, fantasy sports, go into an off-track betting facility, play high-stakes bingo at Foxwoods, or play the stock market or do cryptocurrency, you have to be 18 or over to participate. In terms of playing, betting on sports through some of the online apps, going to the casino or online casino, you have to be 21. And in terms of charitable games, so charitable games are, your local bingo at a local church, 50-50 raffles, any other kind of fundraising type things, poker tournaments that some towns may do sometimes. Those are all considered charitable games, and there are no age restrictions on those, even though, although we do encourage that people who participate are 18 or over, there is no legal mandate that supports that. We just, for best practices and for what we know, we highly encourage 18 or over, but there are no legal restrictions on age. And then loot boxes are skins, so those are video games. Loot boxes are they're like advantages in video games where a person can purchase a loot box for an advantage or some sort of enhancement to their character or to weapons or something like that. Loot boxes, because it's a game of chance, it is gambling, and it is highly lucrative. The video game industry makes a bulk of their revenue off of loot box purchases. So we put that in there, and that's something we're looking at in the future, as far as it's very gambling-like, and it could possibly fall under problem gambling services at some point if the legislature so deems so. Gambling is on a continuum, just like substances and any other types of behavior. You have people who totally abstain, who choose not to participate, all the way up until folks who meet criteria for a clinical diagnosis of a gambling disorder. In Connecticut, we did an impact study a few years ago. In that study, we found about 1.8% of the Connecticut population meets criteria for a gambling disorder. If you look at statistics across the globe, it ranges from 1% to 2%, no matter where you are. So 1% to 2% is the percentage of folks impacted. And in Connecticut, that's a fairly large number of people, even though it's a small percentage. And then we have 3% to 4% are problem gambling. So they might meet one 1 to 3 criteria, but not necessarily meet full criteria for a gambling disorder diagnosis, but certainly experiencing some problems and some concerns. And then there's about 95% of the population that play within this range where they don't have aren't experiencing any negative impacts to their gambling. And then once you drill down into some of the subpopulations, you start to see that there are higher risk with certain groups. Youth are double the rate, veterans about 3.5 times the rate, athletes about 4 times, individuals who are experiencing issues with substance use and mental health about 10 times the rate of the general population, and then those who are incarcerated or involved in the criminal justice system about 20 times the rate. So some pretty hefty numbers there in terms of those who are impacted by this. So according to the National Council on Problem Gambling, for every 1 individual working through a gambling addiction, it impacts about 7 to 20 people. Now, 7 to 20 is a very large range, but if you think about it, on the lowest end of things, 7 may be immediate family, right? So if nothing else, one person's gambling is impacting those in their small circle. So immediate family could be children, spouses, co-workers, and then up to 20. Obviously, there we see cases where folks have access to money. They might borrow or embezzle this money from them unknowingly, and obviously that's going to impact more people. So that's why that range is so broad. Is it could impact a lot of people unknowingly. And then we also like to reinforce the fact that problem gambling has the highest rate of suicide of any other addiction. It's estimated about 1 in 5 individuals have suicidal ideation or have had attempted to take their own lives as a result of their gambling. Our services are funded through a legislative mandate. This legislative mandate established a fund back in 1996, I believe. The fund was called the Chronic Gamblers Treatment and Rehabilitation Fund. Not the most recovery-oriented label, but we're working on that. But currently, that's what the legislation calls it, and that's what's in the statute. And so about prior to the expansion, it was about $2.3 million went to that fund from the lottery. After the online expansion in 2021, that number bumped up to 3.3 million. So 3.3 million comes directly from the lottery to DMHAS to support the services. We also receive a small portion of funds from what we used to be called special revenue. It's what we still call it, but pretty much it comes from a portion of the licensing fees and the wagers that happen on the off-track betting facilities. And then as of 2021 with the online wagering, one of the regulations is if anybody self-excludes, and we'll talk about self-exclusion a little bit later, if anybody self-excludes and they continue to gamble and that is, for lack of a better word, if they're caught gambling on the self-exclusion list, those funds, the winnings are forfeited, and instead of those forfeitures going back to the industry or just not paying out those wins, the forfeitures come into the Chronic Gamblers Rehabilitation account, and we use those for services. And then DMHAS contracts with prevention programs throughout the state, a variety of prevention programs, which Haley and Kelly will talk about, and as well as our treatment services, which are called the Better Choice programs, that are designated for people who are experiencing problems related to their gambling and or their loved ones. So people can access our services if they are a loved one with or without the person that has the gambling issue. And currently there is no federal funding for problem gambling, although there are some attempts to change that in the future, but currently there are no federal funding for problem gambling. So all of the funding comes from this this fund that was created. Show a video on problem gambling Connecticut. Just waiting on our tech support here.
Problem gambling is a public health issue. Experts estimate that gambling-related problems affect more than 100,000 Connecticut residents, plus 275,000 of their family members. The Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services coordinates a statewide problem gambling services division that oversees a network of services in Connecticut for prevention, treatment, education, and integration to help individuals and families address problem gambling and gambling disorders. PGS prevention efforts include working with regional and local organizations to strengthen their network around problem gambling. This is done through collaborating with the gambling awareness teams in each of the state's regional behavioral health action organizations, offering training on gambling-related topics and ensuring initiatives follow the strategic prevention framework and are research-based and data-driven. The gambling-specific treatment programs in Connecticut are called Better Choice and offer outpatient, individual, group, and family counseling services, as well as a connection to recovery support specialists with lived experience, all at little to no cost. The Disordered Gambling Integration Program, or DIG-IN, recognizes that gambling disorders go hand in hand with substance use and mental health disorders, and ensures problem gambling is a relevant topic in treatment. DIG-IN supports providers to include problem gambling in their screening, assessment, and treatment services. Help is available for individuals and families struggling from problem gambling. Reach out. For more information or to contact problem gambling services, please visit our website at www.ct.gov/DMHAS/PGS.
And we'd like to thank our friends at T-Task for creating that nice little video for us. We also like to include a little bit of an org chart. You know, it gets a little, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces. Problem gambling services and the services related are pretty broad in Connecticut. We're very fortunate. So within DMHAS, you know, obviously it starts with our commissioner. We're part of a statewide services division, and then problem gambling services is part of that. And then we have our prevention work, our clinical services, which were mentioned in the video, and then we have our integration efforts. So working with, and I'll talk about DIG-IN in a minute. So we have our integration programs that we work with across the state. So this is just a little bit of a visual of what the services look like. And then we partner with the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling, which is a nonprofit who specializes in problem gambling work, and we partner on many, many initiatives with them as well. So the Better Choice treatment providers offer gambling-specific treatment services. As mentioned in the video, at little or no cost. Finances are often a barrier for folks because of the nature of gambling. So we like to eliminate those barriers wherever possible. We do accept insurance, but we also will provide services at little or no cost for as long as necessary to support a person's need and in their recovery process. And our services are outpatient services, just like most other clinical outpatient services. We offer individual, group, peer support, financial budget and financial counseling, which is important because of the financial aspect. And yeah, And all of our services are provided by internationally certified gambling counselors and recovery supports. And then the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling oversees the helpline. So as per the regulations, legislative mandate, all gambling points of sale have the helpline published. So a person calls the helpline, they can go on, use the text or chat feature and access the 24/7 helpline that can connect person to resources. So it doesn't always have to connect them to one of our Better Choice programs. It can connect it to Gamblers Anonymous or any other information or resources that they would like to receive. And then lastly, we have our disordered gambling integration. So one of the things, as mentioned in the slide on the continuum, is that we know that folks who are dealing with substance use and mental health issues are at much higher risk for developing gambling problems. So we created a program that goes into substance use and mental health treatment providers, and it works on certifying staff, so professional development, as well as screening and integration of problem gambling education for those programs so that we can hopefully educate folks so they don't develop gambling problems, or if they do, give them resources on how to access help. And then, as mentioned before, there is one protective measure that is in place is called voluntary self-exclusion. So a person can go, let's say a person decides they don't want to participate in gambling, they have a gambling problem, or they just want to avoid it totally. They can go to the DCP, Department of Consumer Protection website, and they essentially sign themselves out so that they're not able to participate. So by filling out the self-exclusion registration, they are saying that I do not want to participate in these legalized forms of gambling, and they will be blocked from access. So for the online space, this is the process, is going through Department of Consumer Protection. And this information is available on our website as well as the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling website. There's also, if a person wants to self-exclude from the brick and mortar casinos, there's a process of doing that. That does not happen through the online self-exclusion. All the information is available on the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling's website in terms of forms to fill out and how to go about that process. But that is a very, very good protective measure for those who have identified having a gambling problem. That's it. I'll turn it over to Kelly and Haley.
Thanks, Jeremy. So our roles, Haley and I here at DMHAS Problem Gambling Services, is to manage the state funds we receive that is allocated specifically for prevention. So because there is such a lack of awareness of the risks associated with gambling, a lot of our initiatives that we contract for are aimed at creating outreach and educational opportunities of those risks through a variety of avenues. So Haley and I are going to give you a brief overview of the contracts we manage. And for prevention professionals and organizations on this call today, we hope and encourage you to either get involved with your regional teams, access our resources, apply for some of the funding opportunity that's available, and integrate gambling prevention efforts into the work you're already doing into your communities. So Haley.
Thank you, Kelly. So Problem Gambling Services began its multicultural prevention efforts several years ago with the launch of the Asian American Pacific Islander, also known as the AAPI Ambassador Program. And from what I understand, and Jeremy, please feel free to jump in, since this started before I joined the department, but the goal of that initiative was to train community members and leaders to become ambassadors who could raise awareness about gambling harm and engage their communities in meaningful, culturally responsive conversations about problem gambling and tips for responsible gambling. So that's my understanding. And then as we've moved forward, our impact study and other research revealed that some populations are at higher risk for gambling related harm. And this is because factors like cultural beliefs, language barriers, historical underrepresentation, and limited access to appropriate resources all contribute to this increased vulnerability. And with the success of the AAPI Ambassador Program, along with the data pointing to these disparities, made it pretty clear that we needed to expand our multicultural prevention work. So that led to the launch of the Multicultural Prevention Program run through the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling. Shabrika Warburton is the program manager for this program, and this now funds 5 community-based organizations, each working to engage diverse communities using culturally informed strategies. So they also each have a designated community leader following a similar model to the original AAPI program. So these organizations follow the Strategic Prevention Framework, which we all, or most of us know as the SPIF, and their approaches vary from translating and adapting educational materials to showing up at multicultural events and holding outreach sessions in familiar, trusted spaces. For example, one community conversation took place in a church basement in the morning, set up as a very informal circle, very conversational based and nothing formal. This was a huge success for one of our funded community organizations engaging with older Black and Latinx community members. So many of these efforts also happening during evenings and weekends just to better meet folks where they're at. And we're now in the 2nd year of this program. While we have some grantees that have returned, we've also welcomed several new organizations this year. So be on the lookout for events and trainings that they have coming up through CCPG. And I'll turn it back to Kelly.
Sure. The Gambling Awareness Youth Media Project is a partnership we have with the Capital Region Education Council, also known as CREC, DMHAS Problem Gambling Services, and is supported by our friends and partners at the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling. So this initiative works with groups of students across the state to focus on gambling prevention and provides a learning experience on the value of prevention. It helps raise awareness of the warning signs of problem gambling and assists youth and their adult advisors to develop, produce, and distribute gambling awareness messages. So this year we're able to expand our project and we can now fund 15 groups of students. It originally started with 5 to each receive up to $5,000 for their projects to educate themselves and their peers with the risks associated with gambling. It could be a youth group that's part of a coalition, a community group, a club from a school. The only requirement is that they are in Connecticut and they're middle and high school and have an adult advisors. So groups, they can pick their topic, the type of gambling they want to focus on, their target audience, whether it's their peers, their parents, their community at large, and then they receive support from experts in the field to tailor their message. And then they get to use the funding to disseminate their projects into their community. So a lot of young people don't learn about gambling the same way they do about substances. So this is a really great opportunity. And then in March, we have a virtual showcase event that is emceed by our local celebrity, Brian Hatch. If any of you are familiar with him from the Connecticut Council to highlight these projects, and it's a really great way to showcase their work statewide. So the request for applications for this project does close this upcoming Sunday just before midnight. So if you're interested in participating, please apply. The website is right here on the screen, and there's also on that website the past projects, so you can get an idea of what those final projects look like. Through our partnership with the 5 regional behavioral health action organizations, we are able to fund full-time prevention coordinators in each of our regions to specifically focus on gambling prevention efforts, which is greatly needed. We are so fortunate that we get to partner and work with some of people on this call today: Dina, Braley, Katie, David, and Jeff as our coordinators. And while these full-time positions have only been here for 2 years, the work that they're doing to increase gambling prevention efforts has been absolutely amazing. And some of the work that they do includes coordinating a gambling awareness team for their region, which brings together representatives from treatment, prevention, recovery, and members from various sectors doing the work to either share resources, collect data, assess community readiness to address problem gambling, create gambling-informed presentations and resources through a coalition type structure. So I could not recommend connecting with the coordinator in your region anymore, even if it's just to sign up for their email distribution list to stay informed of upcoming trainings, new emerging trends, or funding opportunities. And even if the work you're doing does not include gambling, you might have someone in your personal life that could benefit from these resources. So you can find their contact information here on this website, gamblingawarenessct.org. And again, thank you to our regional coordinators for all the work that you do. Another project I get to work on is the College Campus Prevention Initiative, which we partner with the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling with and is managed by Mallory Schultz, who is their prevention manager. So this project provides funding to 12 Connecticut campuses and was created in the response to the rising prevalence of gambling among Connecticut's undergraduate population, specifically because of the increase in engagement with fantasy sports, sports betting, and online gambling. So in order to address these concerns, campuses receive funding to address gambling-related harm through activities that educate students and raise awareness about the risks associated with gambling. So this could be providing resources and outreach tabling events on campus, enhancing campus policies specifically around gambling, organizing screening days, providing trainings for RAs or other staff members, incorporating gambling information into some of the classes, such as public health classes, social work, finance classes, just a few examples, and then developing awareness campaigns around their campuses. So some current and past participating colleges include Central Connecticut State University, Connecticut College, Connecticut State Gateway, Middlesex, Norwalk, Quinnipiac, and Quinebaug Valley and Danielson, Eastern Connecticut State University, Fairfield University, Goodwin University, Mitchell College, Quinnipiac University, Sacred Heart University, Southern Connecticut State University, University of Bridgeport, University of St. Joseph, Wesleyan University, Western Connecticut State University, and Yale University. So we have a wonderful list, a very quite impressive list of all the outreach that Mallory's done to get these campuses talking about gambling for the first time. And so this is the only initiative right now in our state that is focusing specifically on gambling prevention. So the work Mallory is doing is just incredible. So nice job, Mallory, because I know you're on this call.
Thank you. We work really closely with the Connecticut Clearinghouse to help raise awareness about problem gambling across the state. One of the key things that they offer through a partnership with CCPG is a 32-hour clinical training series. It's geared toward behavioral health providers and other helping professionals, and it's been really well received. And that training series is coming up. Just a quick plug, so I can put that link in the chat. I know Val has worked really hard on coordinating that training series, along with support from Kathy and Holly over at the Clearinghouse. So thank you both for that. Beyond that series, the Clearinghouse also organizes a variety of other trainings that offer continuing education credits, and folks who have attended those trainings have mentioned some of the highlights. We're talking about brain biology, hearing from presenters with lived experience, diving into ethical topics, and the wide range of subjects covered overall. So we've been really excited about this partnership. This is the second year partnering with the Clearinghouse. They continue to host sessions on topics that I just mentioned, and also additional topics such as cultural humility, the impact of advertising, and even how gambling intersects with the legal system. Looking ahead, folks have expressed interest in exploring topics like youth and gambling, especially early exposure and the gambling elements in video games, as well as how to have real meaningful conversations with young people about all of this. There's also a growing interest in online betting, the unique challenges faced by underserved and the LGBTQIA+ communities, the connection between gambling and suicide, and different strategies for both clinical and non-clinical interventions. So definitely stay tuned. There's more to come for trainings. And to help support all of this, the Clearinghouse distributes a wide variety of printed materials like pamphlets, posters, and promo items that go out to professionals and families across the state. We do have some in English and both Spanish. They've also recently revamped their website, and it looks fantastic, I have to say. So you can check out their dedicated gambling page to order materials, explore.
Haley, your sound cut out. Try again. No.
Hello?
Yes, now you're back. Okay.
That is weird. Where did I cut out?
The materials are in other languages.
Oh, okay. Yes, so the materials are offered in both English and some in Spanish. They've also recently revamped their website and it looks fantastic. So you can check out their dedicated gambling page to order these materials. And as you can see on the screen, we have a lot of variety of different materials available. You can explore upcoming trainings and even access a bunch of recorded sessions that you can watch anytime at your convenience. So definitely check it out. I'll put that link in the chat. Thank you, Kelly. And very exciting. Onto the Cultural Coalition. A couple years ago, we partnered for the first time with the Southeastern Connecticut Cultural Coalition to try something a little different, using art as a way to start conversation about problem gambling. And the idea was really to connect with diverse and often underserved communities in ways that felt creative, culturally meaningful, and just really engaging. And in 2024, we supported 5 amazing artists and organizations who used everything from music and poetry to painting, theater, and community events to spark meaningful conversation. So just some examples for all of you. There was Bet on Black, combined jazz, poetry, and performance to explore gambling's impact in the Black community. At the Cape Verdean Festival, thousands learned about gambling risks through music, a scavenger hunt, and resource sharing. Spit and Paint used live art and conversation to engage folks. There was Pride events in New London and Mystic with art resources, and again, just really meaningful conversations with folks one-on-one. And finally, Outreach presented a series of powerful monologues that explore how gambling impacts different cultural communities. The program has been incredibly well received, gaining momentum both here in Connecticut and nationally. In fact, the National Council on Problem Gambling awarded them an agility grant to help expand their work, specifically bringing these performances to college campuses across the state, which we're excited about. And there is another quick plug. They're coming to DMHAS in Hartford the first Wednesday in October for Beyond the Bet. You might have seen that come out through the Clearinghouse. Can also put that link in the chat. We have a lot of fun, exciting things coming up. And just what's coming this year for the Cultural Coalition includes a community mural, a comic series on social media focusing on gambling risks for neurodivergent youth, a recovery open mic night with music and spoken word, a photo documentary on gambling in the Hispanic Latinx communities, and Bet on Black is back, focusing on mental health and gambling in Black, veteran, and tribal communities. And these projects really aren't just creative, they're meeting people where they are, using the power of storytelling and culture to break stigma, share resources, and again, just really have honest conversations about gambling harm.
Another project that we're able to fund, also with the partnership with the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling, is having a specific category with Fox 61 Student News called the Not Just a Game Award. So Fox 61 Student News is a program that gives Connecticut middle and high school students the chance to step into the world of real news reporting, and has been in our state for more than 30 years. Some of you might remember it as Fox 61 Kids News. It launched in the 90s to help students learn how to research, write, film, and edit their very own news stories, just like professional journalists. So by adding our category into this project, we get to reach over 160 schools statewide, and they have the opportunity to pick gambling as a featured topic for their story. And they can either talk about the potential risk factors for developing a problem with gambling, such as accessibility or social acceptance, educating the public on the warning signs of a problem developing, specifically for youth, how conversations with youth about addiction need to include information about gambling. They could talk about current regulations, policies, or responsible gambling efforts in our state to help protect consumers, or they can interview people that have lived experience from gambling related harm and share their stories of recovery. So as a category sponsor. We also have the opportunity to train teachers that work with students. I know Mallory Schultz from CCPG is on here. She's going to be doing some teacher trainings in the next few weeks. And then this each year, the standout stories are honored at the Fox 61 Student News Awards event. So here's some pictures from this past year, and this was held at the University of Hartford.
And to our van. So you might have seen the Know the Risks Gambling Resource Van pictured here. It was recently at the Prevention Summit last week and has been showing up at events, trainings, and meetings all across the state for the past 2 years. This is a partnership with MCCA. It's completely free and stocked with helpful resources. Plus, there are trained folks right there with the van ready to answer questions and start conversations about gambling risks and promoting responsible gambling and ways to protect against gambling harm. So the van also tends to book up pretty quickly, so it's a good idea to schedule at least 2 weeks to a month in advance to secure it for your event. So we highly encourage you to welcome the van into your communities and regions. Another link I can put in the chat, and it might even be in our resources, and you'll all get the slides, so you'll have that as well. But it's very exciting, and MCCA does a great job coordinating the van for us. And Know the Risks. The Know the Risk campaign was created to raise awareness about gambling-related risks, especially within diverse communities. It shares key information like warning signs, important data, and tips for gambling responsibly. This campaign has been through billboards, bus ads, social media, brochures, and more avenues. Many of the materials are also available in both English and Spanish to help improve accessibility, exploring other languages that we could translate these materials to. And another key goal of this campaign is to provide the CCPG Multicultural Prevention Program grantees with the tools and resources they need to support their prevention efforts on the ground. Recently, we updated the campaign with new images and messaging for social media, posters, and flyers to better reflect the communities we're reaching. And these updates were made in direct response to feedback from the field. And our goal is to ensure that this campaign is inclusive and truly representative of the people we serve. And you can access majority of those resources through the link that I shared in the chat. It's on the Clearinghouse website, and it's also on responsibleplayct.org. It has its own landing page, and I will drop that in the chat right now.
And then one area the gambling field lacks, and not just here in Connecticut, but across our country, is the amount of data that we have available. So with the help from our evaluators at B. Whalen Smith Consulting, we have a community survey on gambling that is distributed statewide through the QR code listed here on the screen that helps us with our efforts to collect much needed data. So our regional prevention coordinators use this QR code at tabling and outreach events in their regions. Our partners at CCPG use it in all of their efforts, as well as on the Know the Risk van that Haley just talked about. So this 26-question survey looks at specific gambling behaviors and trends among the general population, and then specific groups such as first responders, active military and veterans, college and high school students, those who are currently or formerly incarcerated, Department of Corrections staff, or those who have a history with mental health or substance use. So this also helps us collect data on helps us collect data on what gambling resources are available, if there's potential barriers for seeking support, areas that why someone could be impacted by someone else's gambling, such as relationship strains, financial difficulties, legal issues. So if any of you on this call had the ability to share our survey to help us collect data, it would be greatly appreciated. The last 9 questions of this is a screening tool called the PGSI, or the Problem Gambling Severity Index, that gives a score at the end that measures the level of risk. And then there's resources at the end. So if someone is struggling or looking for help with the next step, it will direct them on where to go. And then, as we said earlier, just with the lack of general awareness that gambling is not a risk-free activity, asking these questions out in the community can help raise awareness and shed some light on what the risks are. And Jen, I know you said you needed 2 minutes. So here are just some great resources. Our website, DMHAS Problem Gambling Services, the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling. Please sign up for their newsletter. They have so many great resources available. Jeremy had talked in the beginning about Responsible Play CT. And so we didn't share the logo on here, but it's a partnership between us, CCPG, and our industry partners, such as the Connecticut Lottery Corporation, Sport Tech, and the casinos, as a way to have a consistent and recognizable message statewide on safeguards to keep the harm out of gambling. So you'll see this logo on the back of lottery products, at the casinos, on the majority of their machines and in their ads. And so this website, you can also get to the resource fan. The website for the gambling awareness teams, Gamblers Anonymous, which is a 12-step program for people who want to stop gambling, Gamanon, which is support for persons affected from someone else's gambling, and then the National Council on Problem Gambling, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to addressing problem gambling in the United States through advocacy, education, support services, and CCPG is our state affiliate here in Connecticut. And here are our email addresses. Thank you so much for spending your lunch time with us. We clearly love our jobs, and we're thankful for all these projects that we get to work on. So we're happy to hang out after if anyone has any questions, and we'll make sure we get you the slides.
All right. Wow. You got right under there, Kelly. Good job. Thanks, everybody. Since everyone we got a little bit started late, I'd like to give a couple minutes. If there is anyone who has any questions, feel free to just pop up your hand or raise your hand or unmute for our great guests here today. Or comments, but liking all of the resources that I've put in the chat for everyone. Thank you, Jeremy, Kelly, and Haley for this presentation today. I'm going to stop recording, and then if everyone just wants to hang on for a minute, we'll just have a little bit of closing remarks. So thank you so much for this presentation. This will be posted on our YouTube channel, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. But hang on.